Welcome to this Steplab training session for mentors. So this session should be useful for you if you are mentoring a second year ECT or a first year ECT. So the first thing to say is that you should always be logging into Steplab through your My Ambition portal. So entering your My Ambition login details and then clicking through to Steplab from there without the need to enter any more passwords or usernames. It should bring you through to a homepage that looks somewhat similar to this. So you might find that you have an orange banner across the top, and this will be a bulletin advising you of any sort of change that has been made to your program or a course, such as you've been removed for a course or something like that, which you can dismiss and remove or click into to read. Similarly, there'll also be some notifications underneath this bell symbol. So this would be things such as reminding you that it's time to coach your ECT, or there might be surveys to complete or things of that nature. Also on this homepage, you can see you have an option to provide feedback to Steplab. Here at Ambition, we work really closely with Steplab, and we know that they're really keen to improve your experiences on the programme. So if you do have any suggestions, then do let them know. And then down at the bottom, we have the shout outs. So shout outs are where yourself as a mentor or another mentor in your school has decided to give some praise to their early career teacher, but they've decided to make that praise public so that everyone within the school can see it. So just to say that no one outside of your school will be able to see that, it's just teachers within the school, and you don't need to praise as a shout out. You can just leave that praise private to your ECT themselves. So the main part of the homepage is the to-do list. So you can see it's split here into two categories, coach and learn. You might not have anything under the learn category because coach is your sort of main focus and what your responsibility on the programme. But there are some things here, so we're just going to have a quick look. So I could click in from on one of these activities from the to-do list on the homepage, or they're all housed under this tab learn, so I'm going to click in from there. So as you can see, we've set up this sort of demonstration participant as a mentor on the programme. So they have a mentor orientation course, and they also have a mentoring and coaching development area. You too should have these courses on your Learn page. If you don't, just check. It might be that you've already completed them, so they've moved to elsewhere on Steplab. Or it might be that this one might be being served to you later on at some point. So just to sort of say from the start that these courses are for you to develop as a mentor and to just kind of guide you in your mentoring, but they are completely optional. So the orientation is sort of what you would think, a bit of a welcome to the programme and to your role. And then the mentoring and coaching development area is a bit more extensive with really specific modules on how to complete your mentoring responsibilities. I'm just going to click into one really briefly, really more than anything to give you an idea of how our modules work on the Learn page, because your early career teacher that you're mentoring themselves will have modules to work through that look very, very similar to these. So if I click through on this one about lesson observations, it takes us through to the module, which has a sort of a list of activities that you need to complete. Again, when I say need to, you don't. This is optional, but if you have the optional option to complete. So there'll usually be something to read. There might be sort of a video to watch. There'll usually be like quizzes to take and reflections to make. So I'm showing you this more than anything because it looks very similar to the layout of what the ECT is doing, but this particular content has been developed for you just to help you, maybe if you're new to mentoring or if you just want a bit of a refresher. So that's about it for the Learn page. So we're going to go straight onto the Coach page because this is where you will spend the majority of your time on Steplab as a mentor. So as you can see, your first option here is it says select a teacher. So you might only be mentoring one ECT, or you might have more than one. Perhaps you have one on the second year and one on the first year. So you first need to choose your teacher. So if you do not have anything here, this is a blank page, then this means that you've not been assigned to your ECT on Steplab. So you need to talk to your induction tutor about that to make sure that you are linked together so that you can begin coaching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick Lisa, and we can see already that this option here is sort of ready for me to click on. It's kind of prompted to me, whereas this one is greyed out. This is because the coaching cycle on Steplab is a two-stage cycle of observation and then feedback, and you can't give any feedback if you've not done your observation. So the observation part of the instructional coaching process is when you actually go into your ECT's lesson, and preferably you have Steplab open on a device and you sit at the back of the classroom and you start your observation. And you start to sort of decide whether they've met that step, and then you can also then you move on to set them their step for next week, and then the feedback session comes later. So let's click in and actually work through an observation and feedback cycle. So the first thing you will do is you're sat in the lesson and you're making a decision about whether your ECT in front of you is demonstrating that they have met the previous step you set for them. So you want to be looking at the step that you set, reminding yourself of what it is, and also looking at the acceptance criteria. So there's very specific behaviours you're expecting to see. And in the moment, as you watch them for about 15 minutes, you will sort of be deciding which of these you think you are seeing. Based on this sort of guide, this guides you to decide whether you think they have met the step or not. These acceptance criteria are only a guide. So if they've not met every single one, but you still think overall, yes, they have achieved this step, you can agree and say they've achieved it. Similarly, kind of conversely, that if they have met a lot of these, but maybe they haven't met this one and you feel this one is really important and they've still not quite got it, you can say that they've not yet achieved it. Important to note at this stage, they don't need to, your ECT doesn't need to do a new step, like complete a new step, a different step every week. They can have the same one next week, or you can not achieve that step and then come back to it another time. As long as a step is being set and worked towards, that's the most important thing. But ideally, you would want them to be achieving those steps. So during my kind of observation, I think that they have achieved that step, so I'm going to click achieved. Just to say that if I did click not yet achieved, you would be prompted down here at select your next step, you'd be prompted to choose the same step again, but you could still change it at that stage as well. So also I want to sort of have some praise ready for my feedback meeting at this point. So I'm going to just pop in some praise so that when it comes to the feedback meeting, it's all saved, it's all ready for me to say. I mentioned shout outs before. This is where I could put that on the shout out on everybody's homepage to see if I wanted, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave that private. So at this point as well, I can ask any question about the previous step. There's a suggestion already in there, and I think I'm going to leave that one in because that's really good. But maybe if I could have changed it to something else, or if I thought it wasn't helpful to have a question there, I can just delete the whole thing. Don't need to ask a question at that point. So now it's about sitting back for the rest of the observation and deciding what's the next thing we're going to focus on. So to help me to kind of decide what the step should be, and also so that when I explain what the step is to my ECT, they sort of agree and they can see why I thought it, we're going to think about putting down some observation notes. So I'll be typing this in a moment if I had my device with me. If not, maybe I've written them down on paper and I can actually attach them as a file. But these are just some things I've noticed. And then if you want to get even more specific about the sort of step you're gonna pick and something really specific you noticed, you can use this box here to sort of ask a question. So you might want to kind of, if you've noticed something in particular, you might want to mention it right here, and then it sort of prompts you to question with your ECT what you need to do to sort of move past that thing that you noticed, or how could you make a difference and that sort of thing. So I'm going to plan that question there. Again, completely optional. I didn't even need to do that. I could just leave it as my observation notes. So now it comes to selecting the actual step. So usually what we would advise is that you work through chronologically. So what that means is your ECT is being served their modules 6 at a time, and they work through usually behaviour first, the first 6, and then the next 6, behaviour 7 to 12. Then they work through instruction and so on. It's a slightly different cadence, sometimes depending on the delivery partner, but usually that's the way it works. And we would advise that your steps are in line with those. It just makes sense that if in that week they've been studying, for example, instructions, that you would sort of be focusing on that. So maybe next I might want to move to directing attention. That being said, you can use your professional judgment as a mentor to kind of direct to go in another direction if you're based on your ECT's needs. But I think I'm going to stick. You can even stay within the same topic completely. We can stick in instructions because maybe we feel we need to do a little bit more there. So presence through posture has been done and is really good, but delivering clear instructions I could probably do a little bit more on. So I'm going to click and I'm just going to keep zooming in until I find that the specific action I really want them to work on. So this one is about letting them know before they carry on the instructions, let them know what they need to do. And then even more so, I can get really kind of granular with my instruction. And I think I'm going to pick this one. Important at this stage to let you know that you can create a custom step. So if you're looking through, so you're on instruction, for example, and you're just not finding anything that really suits your context or suits what you want your ECT to be working on, you can create a new step there. And at this point, it will show you those, when you've picked your step, it will show you those acceptance criteria. So you know those really specific behaviours or specific things that they need to demonstrate to show that they have achieved this step. And you'll be able to kind of explain this to them. So I'm going to select that step. At this point, I can change my mind and change the step. I can even customise the step. By customising the step, I could sort of change some of these criteria because maybe some of them don't make sense, or I could add some others. I'm going to leave as is. Now I need to plan how I'm going to sort of model this step. So I want to think in my feedback meeting, prepare about how I'm actually going to explain it and what that's going to look like. And one of the best ways to do this is usually to sort of deliver yourself a script. For giving instructions, for example, I literally script what I'm going to say when I model this to my ECT. It's always useful to have a little look at the model that's provided. So for every step, there'll be an associated model of a teacher sort of explaining how they would model that step. But we do advise that your model will be the best one because it's sort of rooted in reality and it's suited to your context and to your particular ECT in their class. But do have a look at that for any sort of inspiration, bearing in mind that the models can't always be perfectly relevant for you, but will hopefully be sort of universal enough to get something out of. Then at that point, you'd sort of plan a question about the model. Usually something is prompted to me at the moment, what's the difference between your model and your current practice? That's a good one, so I'm going to leave it in. I don't need to ask a question, I could get rid of it, or I could put in my own question. So now I finished this observation part. I know what I'm doing for next time. So I'm going to click finish. So all of those things that I have sort of recorded are going to populate the feedback section, which has now become available. So and I've got a blue circle with a white tick in, which means I've completed my observation. So I'm sort of halfway through my responsibility for this week if it's a year 1 ECT, or fortnight if it's a year 2 ECT, because obviously their coaching is fortnightly. So now we're actually at the point of having our weekly meetings with my ECT, so I'm ready to sort of give feedback. I'm sat with them and I'm ready to share what I have observed and sort of prepare them for that next step. So I'll start with just giving the praise, which missed a letter off there, but never mind, your change of posture. And then I'm going to just give that feedback on the last step. So letting them know whether they've achieved it or not, and then maybe asking those questions you plan to ask. So how did this step improve pupil learning? Next, we actually go on to the modelling of the next step and agreeing it with them. So first of all, you sort of say the things that you noticed and ask them questions about it. And you can show them your observation notes if you want to, but you can just leave them like that and you don't need to show them that. And it's about getting that buy-in about the step. Do they agree that, yes, that is something that happened in their lesson and they could do with focusing on this particular step? So you share with them the step itself, you share with them the acceptance criteria, so what are those specific broken down actions you're expecting to see when you observe them in their next lesson. And at this point you can sort of have that conversation with them, whether they agree with it, you can customise it, maybe you need to change it based on your conversation you have with them. But then if you're all happy with it, then you can move on and you can start to model the step. So I've got my script ready, and this is the point where I deliver that script and I would model for my ECT. And you can watch the model video again at that point as well. And then we can ask our question that we're prepared to ask, but maybe we didn't want to ask a question. That doesn't matter either. But it's just about getting that understanding, really, that they understand what the difference is with their model and why you are doing this, basically. We click next, and this brings us to the final kind of most important part of the feedback meeting, really, and that's the practicing of that step. So we're going to use deliberate practice, which is a really important and useful tool within instructional coaching. So you'll start with your plan to practice tasks. So these tasks will be different depending on the step, but basically they're all about making sure your practice is rooted in reality. Nobody wants a really sort of artificial practice environment. And obviously there's only certain things we can do. It's not in front of a class, but make it as real as possible. So it's things such as you can having access to your lesson resources. So it just makes it a little bit more real, a bit more realistic for the ECT when they are doing this practice. And then you will launch the practice engine and conduct multiple rounds of practice and feedback. So here's the step. They understand it. They can see the acceptance criteria. You have modelled for them. We need to practice. So you launch the practice engine and you ask the ECT to model the step for you, to sort of model it back to you. And while they are practicing, you are deciding whether these acceptance criteria are being met. Then it will prompt you to give them feedback based on what you noticed and what you decided with regard to the acceptance criteria. So you'll be given specific praise based on things that they did do and a bit of suggestion for things maybe they didn't do. And then they will practice again. And you can provide the model for them if they need to. So maybe after 2 rounds of practice, we've done 1, and now this is our second one. Maybe they've met every single one. And we can keep practicing if we want to, because it is really useful to do these multiple rounds of practice. You give feedback, practice again, or we can decide, I think Lisa's there with this one. So we can say finish. So we've done 2 rounds of practice. Next, we need to think about, okay, Lisa understands this, but how are we actually going to make this change stick? Are we just going to go away from this meeting and forget it entirely? We need to think of a way that we're going to do it. So one thing that you can do is sort of, for example, just, maybe you could write a reminder on your planner or on your lesson plan. So it's just something to think about how we're going to make sure that we remember to do this next time. And then finally, you can let them know of what part of the lesson you're going to come in on. So this is more for, obviously it'll be a little bit more obvious if you're doing entry routines or exit routines. For this one, I'm just going to click in the middle. Once I click finish, can see it's sort of added to my kind of achievements of another feedback I've given as the mentor. And also if I go back to my coach page, I can see I've got 2 big blue ticks. I'm all done. I'm all finished. So you can see here this coach again option has come in. This is just for if for any reason you have another coaching session that you just want to sort of, cram in for that week or for that fortnight, you can do that. Or for example, if you weren't able to do on another week, you can do 2 in 1 week by pressing on coach again. But really, this is my obligation as a mentor completed for the fortnight if it's a second year, or for the week if it's a first year ECT. So underneath here, just something to show you really quickly, is the study for coaching. Again, optional. Don't even need to look at this, but it is really useful. Because not only can you click in and you can actually see the modules that the ECTs are completing, so you can see the content that they are looking at, and you can complete it yourself if you want to. You can also see whether your ECT themselves is completing the content. So we can see, for example, that this one was completed by Lisa in September, whereas this one's not yet been completed. It's really useful because you can sort of nudge your ECT if they've not done it. And also it means that when you are setting your steps, you can see whether they have actually done the associated study with that step, because you shouldn't really sort of set it for them if they haven't. Just a note is that if you have a second year ECT, you will not be able to see what they have completed while they've been on the first year of the programme. So you will only see what they have completed since since they became a second year. The programmes are set up slightly differently and separately. So if you do want to know what your second year ECT completed in their first year, you want to make sure they've got everything and they've done everything they needed to, then you just need to have that conversation with them. Something also to note for if you have a second year ECT is maybe you're not sure how to direct your steps, which steps to set for them, because maybe they completed a lot in first year. There is a bit of more freedom and a bit more leeway in the second year. It really needs to go from your own professional judgment and your ECT's particular needs as a teacher to decide where to go. But if in doubt, do work through chronologically. It works really well to revisit. We know that spiral curriculum and coming back to those things that we've done before is really good to embed them. But yeah, there is a bit more sort of freedom for you to think about where your ECT should be directing their attention in the second year. Also on this page, you can see you're able to click into the coaching history. So this will show you all the steps that have previously been set. Another caveat here for second year mentors or second year ECTs is that you won't be able to see what they did prior to the second year. There is another way to see that from the portfolio, but I'm not going to show you that quite at the moment. You can also see just in general your achievements here. The library is quite self-explanatory. This is where you will find your key programme resources as a mentor, so things like just general programme guidance, and also if you have any sort of conferences where you're expected to bring a workbook, this is where you'll find the links to download those, and they're also there for any sort of conferences and things like that. Nothing within the library will need to be completed. You won't be needing to do any quizzes or anything sort of there. It's all just for reference. Your profile is just where you can sort of change email settings and things like that, and also where you can explore your portfolio and see things such as which feedbacks you've given. And if you've completed any courses, they will also be in there. Support section is just really useful. It's this collection of articles that our learning design team have created in collaboration with Steplab, just to help guide you through how to use Steplab. And there's particular ones for mentors themselves, but you can also see the ones for other participants, and things such as seeing the last action step or creating your own action step or customizing one. These are just really useful to have a look through. If you're very new to mentoring and you're a bit sort of worried about doing a coaching session, there is a coaching simulator that you can use where it takes you through a coaching session without you actually having sort of changed anything on anybody's account. It's just something to do if you're very new and you just want to have a quick go in a sort of very low stakes environment. So that's about it for a mentor on the Early Career Teacher programme. I hope this has been useful for you. Thank you.